Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. So today we are going to talk about how we can play against d4, and I want to show you one specific opening which I like a lot, so we will talk about that. So let me open up the board. Okay, so against d4, guys, there are so many different setups which black can go for. But I think one opening, which is called Grunfeld Defence, is very effective against d4. So you may not have heard about it. I will explain, or I will show what this opening is. So the Grunfeld Defence is after white plays d4, black plays knight to f6. Black doesn't play d5. Black doesn't get his pawn to center immediately. Instead, he plays knight to f6. Knight to f6. And now white plays pawn to c4. And now you may be surprised, but black plays pawn to g6. Pawn to g6. So the idea behind pawn to g6 is kind of clear. Black wants to put his bishop to g7 square, and this bishop will be named fianchetto or fianchetto. That is a special name in chess. Okay, so here white plays knight to c3. And then since white wants to play e4, like if you want to play Grunfeld Defense, we shouldn't allow white to play e4. So now we play pawn to d5, pawn to d5, and then we strike the center. I believe this opening is one of the best openings for black, which you can play against d4. I really think that is very dynamic and very playable, very good opening for black. So here black played d5. So there are a couple of ways for a white to play. So white can take the pawn, obviously. White can also continue his development by bringing this knight out like that, bringing this bishop out like that, etc. But let's first talk about what happens when white takes our pawn on d5. So if white takes the pawn on d5, we take back, obviously. And then now, yeah, the most obvious move looks like e4 for white in order to attack the knight. And we don't have to worry about this trade for now, because if white takes our knight, we can take back, and then we will be having some pressure by playing. We will be having some pressure towards this pawn by playing bishop g7, castle, rook d8, knight c6, or maybe c5, knight c6, etc. So we don't have to worry about that queen that much, because white cannot attack our queen by moving his knight out. He doesn't have knight on b1. He just lost his knight. So that is fine. That is fine for black. We can play, as I said, we can play bishop g7, castle, rook d8, etc. And it will be good for black. So let's see what happens if white plays e4. So whenever you see e4, whenever white challenges our knight, when we have knight on d5 square here, we should go ahead and exchange our knight. So we take it. So white takes. And now we play bishop g7, and then now we put our bishop to a very good diagonal. And then now in the next turn we are going to play pawn to c5. So we are going to challenge the center by playing pawn to c5, and it will be so good for black, because so let's say white plays knight f3 here, very natural developing move for white. So we play c5. Yeah, of course we can castle, but I like c5 more than castling, because when we play c5, now we are encouraging white to play d5, and if he does that, we will take the pawn, and that is a fork. That is basically a fork. So that is not going to work out for white. So we play c5. So let's say white plays bishop c4 here. Then we can castle. Let's say he castles. Now we can play bishop g4 to pin this knight, and we are having a really good pressure on d4 pawn. So let's say white plays h3, then we take, he takes, and we are just winning a pawn in the center. So that's just a free pawn for us. So yeah, so that is how we should play when white takes or pawn on d5. So we take back with the knight, and then after white plays e4, we exchange the knights, and then we play bishop g7, and we are going to play c5 and castle like that. And sometimes here, let's say white plays bishop to e3. sometimes we can also go for this move to get some pressure on this pawn, and we are also bringing out our queen, we are hitting this pawn, etc. And then later we can play castle, we can play knight c6, bishop g4, etc. That is also possible for black. Yeah, so but basically that is what we should play. So if white takes our knight, and if he goes for e4, we trade the knights off, and then we play bishop g7, and we go for bishop g7, c5, castle, queen a5, maybe depending on what white plays, c5, castle, knight c6, bishop g4, etc. And then we will be challenging this pawn on d4. So I really like this type of positions for black, and especially if you are below 1500, like I can guarantee you, almost I can guarantee you, like so many people you are going to play will be surprised or will not know what they are supposed to do in this position. So you can also be ahead on the clock, since they will be thinking about what they should play. Like probably you will be pretty much ahead on the clock. Okay, and then let's also talk about what happens if white ignores this pawn and then he just continues his development. So let's say white plays knight to f3. Now guys, if white doesn't take our pawn on d5 square, this pawn, we should never ever take this c4 pawn. Instead we are just continuing our development, so we should stick with our development by putting this bishop to g7 and then castling. And then whenever you see white takes the pawn, of course just go ahead and take the pawn, and then whenever you see e4, just go ahead and take the knight, and then just play c5, and we got the same position as we just looked. And let's say here white plays pawn to e3 here, or it could be bishop f4, doesn't matter that much. Let's say he plays e3 move to defend his pawn. Okay, so again, as I said, we are not going to take the pawn. That is important. So we castle. So let's say white plays bishop e2 in order to prepare castling. Now the move I am going to show you is very, very crucial, very important, which we should keep in mind if we are going to play Grunfeld Defense. So the critical move is playing c5, pawn to c5. So you may think like, okay, but isn't this a free pawn? No, it is not actually. So here, if white takes our pawn on c5, now we are going to play queen to a5, queen to a5. So we are pinning the knight. And here, if white takes our d5 pawn, now we have a very cool move here. We have a great move. So if you want, you can pause the video and you can think about that. Okay, so if you thought about knight to d5, amazing. Like that is a tactic. That is the move on the board now. So that works for black, because after knight d5, so this c3 knight cannot take our knight, and if white takes our knight with his queen, then we can take the knight with a check, and after white takes, we can take with the queen, and that is a fork. We are going to win the rook in the corner. So that shows us that, like, that demonstrates us that in the opening, if you are active, if you are ahead in the development, sometimes you can sacrifice one pawn or even two, like that. So after queen a5, let's say white castles. Now we can take this pawn, and after white takes with his bishop, we can take with the queen. And then we are hitting this bishop. So let's say this bishop goes here. Now we can play knight out, and then we are going to play rook d8 to challenge the queen. Then we can bring this bishop out to f5, etc. And like, we will have good bishops, we will have good pieces, or pieces will be on the good squares. So this position is very, very, very dynamic, and I believe it is easier for black to play. Yeah, so basically, guys, to summarize, like, whenever your opponent doesn't take your pawn, we are not going to take the c4 pawn. So just don't take it. Just don't take this pawn. Just stick with your normal rules, bishop g7 and castle, and then go for c5. So let's say here white plays bishop f4, castle, and then after e3, you can also do the same thing. You can play c5, and then let's say he takes. Now you can do the same thing, queen a5. And whenever you see white takes your pawn, just take it like that. Just take it like that. Okay guys, so I wanted to show you this opening, which is called Grunfeld Defense or Grunfeld opening for black, and I would recommend you to play this one. And if you could get used to it, like if you could be more familiar with this Grunfeld Defense, I think you will see the beneficial side. Like you will like it, and you will see like how good this opening is, and how hard it could be for white to deal with. So yeah, because this one is not extremely common, not so popular in the beginner level or intermediate level, let's say, you know, below 1500 or below 1700. So if you play this opening, I think your opponents will be surprised. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will be continuing to produce or make more videos regarding to openings and some other stuffs. So if you have any questions or if you have any suggestions, please let me know. You can write into comment section. Okay guys, thank you so much, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.